Welcome to the channel, Pete. Obviously, the last time we spoke on live, I was actually on your podcast.
Yeah.
Link in the description if anyone wants to go and catch that. But I suppose this is going to be more of a conversation with an actual financial advisor. Obviously, there's a lot of YouTubers out there who give out financial advice maybe when they shouldn't be. But obviously, you are you've got the creds to give out them sort of information. So do you want to maybe give a bit of a background about yourself, sort of how you've gotten to where you are?
Yeah, sure. Cheers for having me on, by the way. So I'm Pete. And well, where do I even begin? I'm going to be 42 this year in November. I was having a conversation with someone day before yesterday, and over the weekend, and so I finally realized that actually I missed being a millennial essentially by like 2 months or something like that. So yeah, I'm going to be 42 this year. So I've got a little bit of experience behind me. But yeah, I was born here in the UK, in London. My parents are actually Nigerian, so I'm half Nigerian. They came over here in the 70s, essentially. And back when they came over, they were pretty much working and studying. So they were doing like, I think 2 or 3 jobs each at that point. And then they had me by mistake. And I know this because I'm called Peter, and our second boy in the family is also called Peter. So it's like you got 2 Petes. It's like, how can you not know that you've got another Peter in the family? So when we finally met later on in life, people used to refer to him as Big Pete, me Little Pete. So yeah, and I was fostered from 3 months to 7 years old because with them studying and doing 2 or 3 jobs each, they couldn't really have the time to look after me. So I went into foster care up until the age of 7, at which point they sent for me to go back to Nigeria. I went back to Nigeria for 10 years. I did all my secondary school education out there, came back here when I was 17 with 50 quid in my pocket. And yeah, life treats you well. I say that sarcastically.
Jeez.
When you come back with 50 quid in your pocket and not really knowing anybody, because I went straight back to my foster parents' house, pretty much.
Right.
So yeah, I've been homeless a couple of times, but I've been very, very lucky to work my way through all of those kind of things. And despite not having a university degree, end up working for a company in Canary Wharf, where I started as a telephone boy and worked my way up to the executive team in 5 years. And that was a FTSE 100 multinational company. Really. And I qualified as a financial advisor when I was there back in 2014. And that's kind of just a very brief whistle-stop tour of a little bit of background.
Crazy. That is, I think it's almost inspirational as well for anyone who sort of has a better foot in life already, because it basically proves that almost anything is possible as long as you've got determination and hard work and you sort of just say yes to do anything. So no, that's inspiring. That is actually awesome, to be honest.
Yeah, I think ultimately, for me, it's very much about, I don't know, I'm very, very stubborn by nature. I don't like being told that you can't do something. If someone tells me that, I'm like, no, I can do it, by the way. That's my real fuel. I think it's toned down a little bit as I got a little bit older, but like when I was in my 20s and stuff, like you couldn't tell me anything, like, nah, my own person. But you don't have to be defined by your environment or what set of standards you come across. Essentially, you are fully in control of what you decide to do.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important. I think something we try and bring onto the channel, especially. I don't come from a sort of not a financially illiterate background, but my parents definitely couldn't sort of tell you which companies in the FTSE 100, for example. And I think you're not defined by sort of what you almost should go into as a career path or what your interests should be. I think it's really important. I know something for me over the past sort of 4 or 5 years as I've moved through the trading space is this idea of just sort of saying yes to opportunities and not feeling like you're sort of penned into one direction. I think, and always being dynamic. I think it's definitely something that's really important. So no, that's awesome. I think talking about being penned into environments, which obviously leads on to sheep, I think one thing I wanted to really ask you, I know obviously you mentioned it on a recent podcast I was listening to, is the idea of cryptos. Obviously, Dogecoin has been all over social media.
Thanks to Elon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ashamed to say it, but I have seen it on TikTok. I have seen it
on
TikTok.
My God.
Obviously. Yeah, there's a lot of pretty farcical coins coming out at the minute. You've got this Shiba coin, which obviously has been unveiled that the guy who founded Ethereum has 50% of that sort of coins in his portfolio is a little bit suspect to me personally. What are your opinions on cryptos, and where do you see them going? I know there's a sort of, there always seems to be two camps. People sometimes think they're going to go down the drain. Some people think they're going to be regulated. Government's going to bring them out. What's your take as a sort of someone who's almost been near the side of regulation? What was your take on cryptos at the moment, and where do you see them going?
Yeah, so I mean, I think first and foremost, I'm not a crypto expert, so I look at crypto with a lot of interest and intrigue, because the premise of crypto, I understand, I get it. It's decentralized. It can't be controlled by a government or any system. I completely get that. But like, seriously, if you're on TikTok and you've not come across like just so many of these dudes on TikTok and girls on TikTok talking about all these coins, it's like you can't get away from it. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, people like TikTokers are making their own coins and getting their own Discord followers to actually pump the value of those coins. And it's like, you cannot, like, what's the purpose? What's the function? I don't quite understand what the merit is, besides, that person making a load of money, because now you've created it, you've got your followers to pump it, you obviously hold majority of the shares, I would imagine, right? Because you created it.
Yeah, of
so
course.
you get rich, some of your followers get rich, but if the ones who miss the pump basically then lose money. So we talk about regulation and the importance of regulation, and I do think sometimes when you speak to the general public or just people in general about regulation, it's frowned upon, it's hated, it's not something that they find value in. But with crypto, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm on the fence because I have worked in an industry where that is highly regulated, and the regulation is there to protect people. Essentially, that's what it's there for. It's not there to prevent people from investing or from pursuing their life goals through investment or financial means. It's there to hold the big boys, the banks, the investment houses accountable should they do something wrong that disadvantages the public. Now, many people will argue, well, where were they in 2007, 2008? Well, just because you didn't hear about the repercussions that individuals and companies had to bear doesn't mean that there weren't repercussions. And, you look at how the regulation and, the financial services industry has actually changed since 2007, 2008. There are now massive liquidity requirements for these banks and investment houses now that they have to meet in order to be able to operate in the first place. And you're not going to have any of that with crypto. So I'm on the fence because I like the idea of Ethereum. I like the idea of Bitcoin. I like the idea of having, new technology that opens up new doors, new means of investment, new means of wealth creation to the general public. I just don't think it's helpful when any Tom and Harry can essentially just create their own coin, get their followers to pump it, and all of a sudden it's a free fall, it's a frenzy. And that's what it feels like right now. It feels like a frenzy. Everybody's on it because, oh my God, this coin went up. One of them went up 3 million or something percent? It was ridiculous. And if you put something like 100 quid in, it would be worth like 3.5 million quid in one day.
That is ridiculous.
It's crazy. It's nuts.
That is ridiculous. I think for me, with the regulation side of things, I was having this conversation with a guy from my community who's a massive crypto head. He is everything crypto. If you've got a crypto question, you can ask him, and I guarantee he'll know the answer. And for me personally, I'm on the fence like yourself with regulation, because I think there's the idea of having regulated cryptos. I think will prevent this sort of pump and dump nature, which is all crypto seems to be at the minute. But on the same time, I think sometimes, obviously, Bitcoin was the first actual cryptocurrency that we know of. And it's probably one of the most popular, I would say. And I often think maybe this regulating a currency or a crypto, sorry, that was meant to be unregulated and meant to be sort of able to be transacted without any real paper trail. I often wonder whether that would sort of undercut the entire crypto market as such. And if we do see government regulation on cryptos, whether it'll cause the market to fizzle out a little bit, because I do think, and this is the reason that I don't personally actively invest in crypto. I think the last time I bought a cryptocurrency was probably about 12 months ago, 18 months ago. It's just because they're so volatile that I don't think I don't think they're a safe place to invest unless you've got an ulterior motive or a different interest in the crypto. So, for example, there's a guy called the Martini guy. Now, he's been investing in cryptos for longer than I've been trading. When I first started, he's making YouTube videos about investing in cryptos and things like that. And I used to watch them and sort of think, what is this guy talking about? I haven't got a clue. And it's people like that that sort of still give me a little bit of faith in the crypto space because they've been around for a long time. But as I was saying, I think there's a lot of people jumping on the back of this sort of internet hysteria at the minute, which I think would maybe benefit from regulation if it was to come in and sort of almost stomp that down a little bit. But at the same time, I don't know whether that maybe would underpin the sort of the underlying benefits of having a cryptocurrency, which obviously is for places that maybe have sort of fiat currencies that can be manipulated by corruption and government sort of printing cash willy-nilly, such as places like India and China and stuff where they've got sort of a bit more of a controlled currency as to what we've got here in the West. But on the note of sort of manipulation, I'm keen to get your opinion on this. Do you think Elon Musk tweeting is market manipulation, or do you think it's defined as fun? Now I know this is all the time. Obviously, he's going to send a rocket to the moon called Doge. Do you see that as do you see that as market manipulation? I mean, I think there's a massive conflict of interest there. The dude's clearly in the crypto space investing. And do you think that's manipulation? Do you think there should be some sort of regulation on that? Obviously, I know the SEC are on his back all the time about it, but what's your take on that?
The thing is, the SEC would be on his back if crypto was regulated. That's the irony of this, right? Because he cannot send a tweet about any company with the view that actually, you know what, the share price of that company could go up or down. He's not allowed to do that. He's in trouble if he does that. But crypto isn't regulated. So technically, he can do what he wants. Now, is that market manipulation? Yeah, it is, because you're using your influence to influence the price of an asset, which will go up or fall based on your followership, your influence, and who you essentially are. I think I also look at this with another lens, right? If you think about what we've been through over the last 12 months and stuff, like especially in the States. I mean, how many stimulus checks have they had? Maybe like 3 or 4 this entire time for like what, $2,000 or something like that each. I don't know if those numbers are correct, probably around about there, which what I've seen. I think they're different based on family and all that, right? But people in the States have really, really struggled. They have suffered through this. So part of me is like, well, is he just being this dude? Like, he is this dude where he's quite eccentric. He's a bit of a genius and he likes to have fun. And he's like, I wonder if I can influence this. And he basically just tweets it knowing that people are going to invest in it, maybe make a little bit of money. Is that where he's coming from? I think there's an element of that to it. But it doesn't make it right. If it was a regulated product, he would be getting his hand slapped to left, right, and center, because you cannot do things. You can't be a person of note and do things to influence the price of an asset. You can't do that. It's the same thing with the whole GME AMC stuff, right? It's an organized effort. Now for him, it's the army of one, and he's like the commander because he's of high influence. But it's really, really interesting. I watch him sometimes, and SNL, I think he was talking about it then, and the price of Doge actually crashed whilst he was doing that. But things are just so unpredictable.
With respect to GameStop, obviously you've mentioned there. I wasn't going to mention GameStop because I think there's been a lot of hysteria, but obviously with what happened with GameStop, if you don't know what happened with GameStop, I don't know where you've been living, maybe under a rock. If you don't know what happened to GameStop, just stop this video, pause it, open a new tab and search it. There's thousands of articles. With that being said, obviously there's a lot of people lost a lot of money. A lot of people made a lot of money as well. Do you think, as we're seeing what seems more and more of these manipulations of not just unregulated assets like crypto, but almost small market cap stocks, do you think people maybe need to start having qualifications, some form of training or something like that, before they can actually start investing real money into the markets? Obviously, we've seen America ban CFDs because of the inherent risks. What's your take on that? Do you think people should just be allowed to make trading accounts as they can now, or do you think maybe that should be tightened down a little bit so it's a bit more difficult?
Yeah, good question. I think it's unreasonable to expect the general public to take qualifications in order to invest in some kind of instrument. And this is where regulation comes in. This is where having a body that puts the onus of responsibility on a provider comes in, because it's all very well and good, and I speak about this all the time. It's all very well and good you thinking I can make a load of money if I go and buy this coin, or I can make a load of money if I go and trade this stock or buy this stock. That's the main thing that people focus on typically, and that isn't through any fault of our own. That's because of human nature. Human nature, naturally, we are lazy, we are greedy, we want things easily, right? So what you'll find is with crypto and with stocks, it's the same thing. And this is how, how can I put this politely? Illegitimate schemes leverage and take advantage of people, because they appeal to the base instincts that we want things to come to us easily, and we don't want to do any work for it. And I don't think it's reasonable to get people to take qualifications, but I do think that regulation should demand that providers have to take people through certain steps, and some providers are better than this than others, in order to give them access to CFDs, for example. Because Robinhood's going through this at the moment. What was it? A kid woke up and it was an error. His account minus $100,000 or $200,000, kills himself.
Yeah.
This is serious stuff. And it's all about the gamification, right? They've got a lawsuit right now because they've gamified investing. Investing is not a game. It's a very, very serious business. You can make a lot of money, but guess what? A lot of people lose a lot of money. GME, I was in one of the in the Reddit group for that. Even after the pump had basically stopped, there was a guy in there he was like, I put my life savings in. I've got $150,000 at stake. Are we still holding? Are we selling? And it's like, dude, like people sold 3 or 4 days ago. You're still holding on. And it's like at that point, the price was way, way, way down. People like that get roped into this fallacy of, this is a great money-making opportunity, not really understanding what it's all about, going with the crowd, and they get caught. And that's really where the danger is. It's not the opportunity or what's available, it's the access that people have without really understanding what they're going into. And that's where regulation needs to come in to ensure that people have protections in place. But then I can say, I can argue the opposite way from the general public. Don't prevent me from investing in something. Well, unfortunately, you don't know what you don't know until you know you don't know it. And a lot of people who were in GameStop and AMC, they didn't know that they could lose money because they didn't know that they didn't understand it until they lost money. And at that point, the damage is already done.
Yeah, I think I think there's definitely an onus almost on people who are over 18 who can open trading accounts to almost be self-educated. I'm massively on the fence with this one because I obviously don't have any investment qualifications or trading qualifications other than actual experience. And if I was then having to have, say, I don't know, a level 6 in financial analytics, for example, something like that, that would prevent me from accessing the markets, which I probably have more experience than someone who's graduating from university with economics, for example, or the Joe Blogg student in the actual markets. So yeah, I think there's definitely a sort of fence that we need to sit on with this. I know there's some brokers who I've worked with in the past, I've had accounts with, who have been great at this. There's actually been instances where traders who I know are profitable, have been profitable for years, have actually failed the KYC checks on the little questionnaires because they just rushed through the questions, and actually some of them are a little bit tricky. Then there's also brokers that I know who don't have any questions. As long as you've got money to put in the account, that's all that matters. So yeah, I think there's maybe an onus on the regulators to really pin that down and make sure there is that questionnaire. The broker that I found was actually pretty difficult to make an account with, which I thought was quite good. They actually referred you straight to a demo account if you didn't pass the sort of the questionnaire as such, and you actually had to speak to a member of their account management team to get that ban lifted off your account, which I thought was quite a good way, a sort of soft boundary as such, to make people maybe think about what they're doing. But with that being said, obviously I mostly do trading. I've just started dabbling in investing. I've done a lot of investing over the years, but most of it just passive through sort of investment providers. If you were to be a beginner from now and had, say, £1,000 or £2,000, where would you actually begin to start with investing with stocks? Would you look at a portfolio? Would you look at individual stocks? Where would you, what would your best non-financial advice be for someone starting out in this sort of, in the stock space rather than the trading space?
Yeah, great question. I mean, look, if you're approaching investing and you are completely green, like you know nothing, you have no business buying individual stocks. And I cannot stress this enough. You have no business buying individual stocks. And the way I like to compare this is, right, people think it's easy, but you know, running 100 meters in 10 seconds, like under 10 seconds, like Usain Bolt, is that easy? It looks easy, but is it actually easy? No, it's not. And the funny thing is, nobody in their right mind will be like, yeah, I'll take on Usain tomorrow. I'll put my house on it. Thank you very much. I'm sweet. I can catch him. I can beat him. Nobody in their right mind does that. But people, when it comes to the stock market, believe, yeah, right. Some bloke on TikTok's telling me to buy this stock because it's going to 10x. And this is where I absolutely I detest YouTube for this, is that you find so many people talking about this stock is going to 10x, is going to 100x. It's like, how do you know? Did you Marty McFly with a small sports almanac or something like that? Like, if you are, like, show me your house, because I'm sure you're a quintillionaire by now. Like, people talking about stuff that they, number one, don't know for sure. And a lot of the time it is guesswork. If you are picking stocks, let's be completely honest, it is guesswork. Even the professionals who spend years and years and years getting into qualifications, Warren Buffett, it's guesswork, but it's an educated guess nonetheless. Now, if you're completely new to this, you don't know how to analyze sectors, you don't know how to analyze stocks, you don't know how to read financial accounts, you don't know what makes Coca-Cola a better company than Pepsi or vice versa, you have no business buying Tesla. You have no business buying Coca-Cola. You have no business at all buying any individual stocks. The best thing you could do is just go and buy a basket, a fund or something like that. Vanguard, Fidelity, or maybe using a provider like Moneybox, Wealthify, Money Farm. Use professionals to help you get your first start in investing, because the last thing you want to do is invest money, have a really bad time, then you get your fingers burnt that you don't want to invest anymore. And guess what? You've ruined your entire impression of investing by just making a very simple mistake that you didn't really know that you were going to make. Whereas you could have done something very, very differently to give you the springboard to create wealth on the long term.
Yeah, I think that's, especially for me. Obviously, as you know, Nathan is massively into stocks, trades individual stocks, invests in individual stocks. For me personally, find it hard to get my head around the whole thing. Never really committed that much time. So as you're saying, I actually invest in Vanguard S&P fund, and that's where I put most of my money that I'm investing.
And that's a great fund, by the way. That's the top 500. That's the top 500 companies literally in the world. It's like, imagine, like, you can have a piece of every single one of those companies, like every single month, for the money that you're investing. Price as well. Yeah, it's like, it's an amazing investment. It's an amazing fund. Track record, amazing. Obviously, past performance isn't any indication of future performance, but like, it's done extremely well. And you're buying the biggest companies on the planet. Like, what is there not to like? Like, do you think that you're going to outperform the S&P 500? Well, you might if you get lucky and you're able to do the analysis. But in terms of just being able to invest, and I don't like using the word easily, but just being able to put money into something, knowing that actually the selection's already done, the running and the management is already done on your behalf, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think it's almost, for me, when I was looking at it, I was looking for that almost quote unquote stupid investment that was still smart. It's something that didn't require any real management, didn't need to analyze any sort of company accounts or anything like that. It was, there we are, done, and that's it. Now that's done like sort of 10% in the past 3 or 4 months, but there is this sort of almost a bit of a bad smell in the air if you read these sort of financial articles online of a potential stock crash or a market correction. 2021, some people are saying 22, 23, who knows? What are your opinions on this? Do you think equities are overvalued? What is your opinion? Am I going to lose all my money in the S&P? That's what I'm saying.
Mate, a market crash is always around the corner. Always around the corner. I mean, let's just look at the stock. Let's look at the markets generally. We've been on a bull run, a massive bull run since 2007, 2018. You know, the markets are cyclical, which means they run in a cycle. And typically, if you go back in history, every 10 years or so, there's a correction of some kind. We haven't had a significant correction. I mean, COVID and what happened last year, you could call that a correction, but it wasn't as a byproduct of something being fundamentally wrong with the stock market. And that's the big difference. 2007, 2008, there was something fundamentally wrong with the stock market. Back in 1999, the tech bubble, there was something fundamentally wrong with the stock market. We've not had that for a very long time. So we are overdue a market correction of some kind. The speculation is, would it happen this year? Would it happen next year? Would it happen the year after? We don't know. If we knew it, I would invest at the right time. We'd all be trillionaires. So I think it's really important to always, invest knowing that things could turn the opposite way at any given time. And you don't have any control over the factors that make those swings and those moves a reality. However, with that being said, investing isn't about just taking unbridled risk and just like not really caring about what the outcome is. No, it's about taking calculated risks. So in everything that you do when you're investing, you're trying to ascertain, right, what is my downside? What are the chances of me losing money? How do I protect and guard against that downside, that possibility that you could lose money? And how you do that is by making sure that you're invested in, number one, funds that are well diversified from a geographical and sector view. So you don't want to put all of your money in tech, like at all. Because tech this week is an absolute mess. It's horrible. I'm doing a challenge at the moment, a trader v trader challenge in conjunction with Stake. And I stupidly chose the tech sector like 4 weeks ago, and I'm down. I'm down because everything seems to be down. So you don't want to have all your money in one industry, in one sector. You want to spread it across tech, financials, construction, consumers, energy. You want to spread it around. You want to spread it around industries. You want to spread it around countries. So United States, emerging markets, UK, Europe. And as long as you do that and you're comfortable with how you've made that selection, and this is why like researching stocks and building a portfolio can be quite complex. As long as you do that, you know that you've protected your downside as much as possible. From there on out, what I typically say to people is like, you literally strap in and enjoy the ride because it's like a roller coaster and there's nothing you can do about it.
That's a pretty interesting way to look at it, because I think to look at it in any other way would be sort of naive. I think you've got to you're at the mercy of the market. I think that's any sort of financial trading or investing. You sort of, anyone who claims that they know what's going to happen in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 days, 10 weeks time is totally lying, unless they know something that we don't.
Yeah.
You're very much at the mercy of
it's that sports almanac, mate, brought back from the future.
You've got to just be prepared to deal with the eventualities that come out of the markets, the opportunities that you get given. Yes, all right, there's something I'll be down 10% next week, but it's a good opportunity to get in and buy some more. And I think it's about looking at it from a good approach and being sort of dynamic and not just being fixed and dead set of, all right, yeah, this is going down, I've got to start selling, this is going up, I've got to start buying. I think you've got to be a bit more precise, and that's something that I've tried to take from my trading into investing as I move more towards that side of the field. But obviously with the sort of looming correction pending, do you think it's a good time for beginners to get in the market, or do you think there's a better time? Do you think people will be best to wait if they're looking to start maybe investing, to wait for this correction? Or do you think it's just a case of, as you're saying, just sort of almost get in and just be prepared for maybe a bit of a rough ride for a year or so?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question. When is a good time to invest? I mean, look, I know people who will be like, oh, I'm going to wait for the correction, but okay, what happens if the correction doesn't happen for another 2-3 years? Then you've missed out. So I think, if you're looking at it in, you can't get away from the fact that markets are volatile. You can't get away from the fact that people are saying the markets are going to crash. I mean, there are a number of notable investors. I love what's it called? The film called The Big Short. Like, that's one of my favorite stock market films. I mean, the guy who predicted the crash back then, he's talking about there's going to be a massive market correction. The thing is, we don't know when it's going to be. If it's going to be next month and we knew what day it was, guess what? I'm going to stack a load of cash and I'm going to invest on that day exactly. But we just don't know. And it's impossible to time the market. So if anybody's looking at the stock market right now with a little bit of trepidation, you're a little bit unsure about, oh my God, is it a good time or not? It is always a good time to invest in the market. But everything that I said prior is important. Risk management, how you're going to diversify your portfolio, how you're actually going to invest. Hopefully, you're not the kind of person who's thinking you can just do it on your own and just go and buy individual stocks and it's going to be sweet. No, you want to pick your investment vehicle, how you're going to invest, and as long as you're diversified, you're comfortable with the risk. Again, just strap in. But I think if you are someone who wants to invest on a monthly basis, like, you don't need to time the market. Like, you're going to get pound cost averaging, and it's going to be beautiful because you're going to be getting stocks at a high price, at a low price. The mixture of all of that will mean that over the long term, you're going to have positive returns pretty much. So, it's not a guarantee, but that's what we know to be true from historical data.
I think that's what it's all about. Is I think as well, if you are sort of maybe looking at your portfolio and you're down a little bit, just jump on the daily or monthly time frame on TradingView, for example, of the asset you're trading. And as long as you've picked something that's been around for a while, typically you generally see an uptrend. The markets are pretty much always bullish over the sort of longer time frames, and that was the sort of mindset that I took into my investing journey as such. I was having quite an interesting conversation with a trader from the community who's just started, and it was about this idea in trading, how a lot of the time when you're winning, someone else is losing, and this idea of ethics in trading, which sort of led us to think of the question: do you look at ethics when you invest in companies, or are you solely looking for returns, or is there a sort of balance there for you? Are you looking for an ethical company, or are you not really that fussed?
I am personally. So, I mean, some of the funds that I'm investing in at the moment do have an ethical leaning. So I've got an investment which has no fossil fuel or tobacco at all.
Right.
And I think that element is important because at the end of the day, mate, money talks. And if you look at some of the challenges that the world is facing right now, climate change and all this kind of stuff, and this isn't, if you're an anti-climate change person, you won't feed into this narrative, but I do. I think it's really important that we do what we need to do to ensure that the world is a better place. That's our responsibility, right? And I think that if you're able to invest your money in a way that helps that cause along, then I'm all for it. I certainly do take that approach through, but that isn't true for everybody. And there are different ways of investing ethically. There are different screening processes or filters that people use or companies, investment houses use when they say ethical investing. So some of them will have positive and negative screening. What that essentially means is that, we will only invest in companies that have this kind of outlook, and we're willing to go on the board of this company to push that agenda forward. Negative is no fossil fuel, no tobacco, no nothing. So the approaches are different. I personally do have a look at investing ethically. Ironically, when you used to look at ethical investing maybe 4 or 5 years ago, people would say it's expensive, they don't perform well. Actually, some of the best performing funds over the last 12, 24 months have all been ethical funds because, well, it's not a good example, but tech was absolutely killing it, which it isn't currently. But, the performance and the cost of these things have come down. The performance has gone up, the cost has come down, and it's becoming more mainstream. So soon we are going to have fully all ethical investment options, and you won't be able to overlook it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that I don't want to look to bring into my portfolio. It's not something that I've really considered ever. I wouldn't class myself as unethical, but it was never something when I was really driven by just making money in the markets that I ever really thought about. I think maybe it was just because I was young and naive, but definitely sort of as I become more aware of these sort of things like climate change, overfishing and stuff like that, it's brought almost that sort of angle of ethics into my investing. It's something that I'm definitely keen to explore in a bit more deal, because ultimately I think we all as individuals have a role to play, and if I can make money whilst playing that role, I suppose it's you're killing two birds with one stone as such. But
absolutely,
say there is a correction, say 2021 is the correction. Please don't just start shorting after I've just said that. That is not financial advice. Where do you see the long-term growth areas? Obviously, Michael Burry, as you mentioned from The Big Short, is putting massive faith in water. Obviously, it's a finite asset, unless we somehow manage to start harvesting meteors with loads of hydrogen on. But where do you see the long-term growth areas? I know a lot of people are interested in sort of the space side of things, with Elon pushing on with SpaceX, but where do you see the sort of where's the new tech boom as such for you? Where do you see that growing? What sort of growth sectors are you looking for?
I think renewable energy is going to be big. because I think naturally, and we are kind of on the road to there anyway. Renewable energy is going to be absolutely huge. I'm really taking a keen look at genomics, so the medical side to things there, and some of the stuff that they're doing in that arena is absolutely incredible. Looking at curing cancer and blindness in babies, and diseases, and being able to restructure the genome. I mean, that work, if they are able to get that off the ground, I mean, health is wealth, right? People will do anything for health. That kind of stuff, it will be world changing, like on so many levels. Tech, I think, is still going to be a big area. I saw a clip this morning. I don't know whether it was a prank video or not, but they were saying that Microsoft has actually developed, and let me see if I can remember the phrase that they used. They have developed, it was something along the lines of a DNA hard drive or something like that they've developed. And the implications of that are just ridiculous. And if you ever watched Elysium with Matt Damon, it's basically it's that level type stuff, mate. Like,
really?
Yeah. It's incredible. Insane. So I think there are some really exciting areas. Tech is going to be huge moving forward. I mean, we're moving into new area of technology, period. I think the blockchain is going to be very, very exciting as well. I think crypto will be exciting. But renewable energy, tech, blockchain, genomics. I'm really excited about genomics. I was born with sickle cell anemia, and that's one of the things that they're looking to basically cure just by literally tweaking something on the genome. It's insane.
That isn't a field I've looked at, but it is something that's relatively close to home. I still remember having a relatively humorous conversation with my girlfriend. She had a large intestine removed due to a genetic condition when she was sort of 12 or 13, and she still recalls a consultant saying 2 years later, if she just held on for a couple more years, they had technology to 3D print a new large intestine, which I just find absolutely incredible.
That's mad, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy. But things are moving so quickly, and it's like at the moment I'm on the verge, and I've been saying this for months. But there's Kathy Wood. She's an investment manager in the States, and she's got a genomics ETF. I've been looking at that, and I was watching one of her videos a couple of weeks ago, and she was saying, her stance is that these companies are working on things that are so important that if you're an investor, it's foolish not to invest in them just in case they do get it right. Because if they do, it's going to be world changing, not life changing, world changing. So he goes, you'll be stupid not to invest in them, but you are taking the risk that actually they might get it wrong and you may lose a lot of money. But that area is so exciting to me.
Yeah, that is definitely something that I think maybe you need to do more videos on that. That would be an interesting watch, because I've looked at some of Kathy's stuff before. I think it was Marcus from your community actually sort of mentioned it to us, and some of her stuff's incredible. So I'll have to definitely check that out.
Yeah,
I think let's have a little look at something that I want to sort of call almost invest in horror stories. Now, obviously, you recall when I was on the podcast with yourself, I mentioned a few of the horror stories that I've heard through my sort of relatively short period of time in the trading space. But obviously, you've had a lot more exposure in the financial sector than me. What is the worst horror story, or some of the worst horror stories that you've ever seen or heard of in the investing space? Obviously, it'd be nice to say you'd ever heard none. Everyone was always using risk management, but we know this is just never the case.
The one that really always sticks back in the back of my mind, and I remember this all the time because I spent so much time trying to convince this guy that this was not a legitimate investment. But it was one of those situations where he was already in for so much that he was like, I've got to carry on, in for a penny, in for a pound. And I always think about this guy because we used to tell him, like, dude, it isn't real. I spent time like on the phone trying to reach this company, and he just wouldn't have it, even though I got him one day and he was like, yeah. And he came back the following day to send money. And I'm like, why? So basically, this guy, he was at that time, he must have been in his late 50s or so. And he would come in and he would send, $5 grand to Panama, $6 grand to Panama, $7 grand to Panama. I'm like, what is this? And he goes, like, what, it's a lot of money. So, what do you what are you sending it for? Oh, I'm investing in this and all that kind of stuff. Okay, cool. And so how long have you been investing in this thing for? Oh, for 3 years now. So what's been the return? It must have been a really good investment if you're just sending more money. Yeah, I've not had any money back out just yet. They keep promising me that I'm going to get a 25% payout, but they just keep asking for more money. And I'm like, okay, but you're asking questions, right? You've already given them, how much you give them? 50 grand at that point. So you've given them 50 grand. Does the missus know? No.
Oh God.
And I'm like, okay, cool. And I was like, okay, cool, that's fine. So, next time you come in, bring in some information and I'll have a look at it for you. And back then we didn't have the internet. I was a cashier in the bank at that point. This is very, very early on. And he came in and brought in the papers and stuff like that. They would send him. And, I saw like, I knew instantly it's not real. So started picking up the phone to Panama. Nobody that you were ringing answered the phone. And I was like, have you ever tried to call these people? And I was like, no, they always call me. I was like, okay, so you've not tried to call them. I said, I'm calling this number right now. Like, there's nobody picking up. It's a dead line. Yeah. And this probably took us 3-4 days to really find out that actually it's a scam. But he just couldn't face the fact that he had already sunk 50 odd grand in at that point, and it could possibly be a farce. He was always hopeful that he was going to get his money back, or he was going to get some kind of return. And that always sticks in the back of my mind all the time as something that I've seen for too long and too often as well.
That is awful. I know I get a lot of people message, and some family friends and stuff as well, approaches with similar things where there's a guy, it's actually the guy who cuts my hair. His father-in-law got in touch and said, look, it's similar sort of age. The scammers seem to prey on these sort of people. I think it's because they know they've generally got money.
You know what? It's a combination. Sometimes they know that they've got money, but also sometimes they know that they haven't got money, and the little money that they have, particularly if they're older in the 58, 60 odd range, where they know that I don't have enough to retire, they are more prone to take that risk and invest in those kind of things because of the promise of this might fund my retirement. It's really, really sad, and it's really evil. And I just, it's people preying on people's desire and mistakes and knowledge that they've made a mistake, that they've been late to planning their retirement, so on and so forth. And it's heartbreaking to watch.
Yeah, this was awful. I mean, this guy had signed up with a less than reputable broker, which I'd never heard of. Struggled to find any regulation information on the website. And basically turns out this guy had invested, I think it's about 10 or 12,000 pounds into this trading account. So it was trading rather than investing, and was having daily calls with this account manager from this brokerage firm. Now, anyone who hasn't got a trading account, if you do deposit 10, 15, 25, if not more, 1,000, it isn't unusual for a broker to call you every day and sort of ask how you are. You can obviously just tell them to go away if you don't want that, but it is common for them to check in on you, see how your trading's going and stuff like that. And this guy was getting calls every single day telling to invest in gold, in different currencies. And I was like, all right, yeah, fair enough. Like they are sometimes legally allowed to do that. And I did some digging for him. I said, look, don't invest in anything else. If he rings you, just say you're unavailable. And at this point, he was in about 7.5 grand's worth of drawdown, which for those of you who don't know what drawdown is, essentially negative balance. It's money that's gone out of the account. It's in the market, floating around. It's floating P&L. And basically, I did some research. Thankfully, the guys were regulated in Cyprus, which is quite an easy place to get regulated. Probably at the moment wouldn't join a broker who has SciSec regs. You probably want FCA or ASIC at least. And basically, these guys were giving him unregulated investment advice on a personal phone number, so it wasn't linked to the brokerage, and getting him to hedge positions. And then they were charging insane changeover fees. And thankfully, this guy had rang, and because it was a sort of friend of a friend, he was able to trust my not financial advice, but pretty much advice. And I just said, look, you're probably going to have to just close out and cut your losses. And that was his first real experience with investing. And I think it's such a shame that there's so many scammers out there, and you hear all these horror stories, like that guy who you mentioned, who lost like 50, 60 grand, probably didn't want to ever invest again. It's just because of one instance. And I think it's so frustrating for me. Obviously, I know we had a phone call probably 2 weeks ago now when that guy had made the fake account and was scamming your followers with your legitimacy and credibility. And a similar thing happened 3 or 4 weeks before that with my own account. I think it's such a shame that people are almost playing people's emotions to get them to essentially hand over an endless amount of cash and essentially
that is the age-old game, mate. It's psychology. Psychology is one of the biggest weapons that anyone could wield against another man. Like, it's preying on your insecurities, on your weaknesses, on your doubts, and giving you the vision of what you really deep down want. And look, those things are common for everybody. Everybody wants to live a comfortable life. Everybody wants to have enough money in the bank so they don't have to worry. Everybody wants to be able to put good food on the table. Everybody wants to be able to send their kids to school and leave something to their kids when they're gone. That's universal. That's what they prey on. And unfortunately, in the environment where we are right now, crypto seems to be that space because, Doge millionaires popping up left, right, and center, millionaires from Shiba Inu popping up left, right, and center. These things all appeal to our base instincts of what we essentially crave as necessities in life. And it's always going to be this way. I remember back in the day in 2012 or so, something like that, people were selling carbon credits. And as ridiculous as that sounds, people were falling for that stuff hand over fist, 20 grand in, 50 grand in. And it's like, do you know what you're buying? Like, I actually was working for the brokerage. I worked there for a week and I was like, nah, this ain't legit. It's not legit. Because so the pitch was this. We're in an environment when we need to offset our carbon footprint. So if you invest £20,000 with us, what we're going to do is we're going to be investing in carbon credits. These are issued from a exchange in Brussels. It's like, you really think what they're talking about here? You're talking about offsetting carbon dioxide, right? So we're going to be offsetting against it. And by the way, we're going to give you a 15% return in year one, or 40% return in year one. Well, guess what? If I get someone to invest £10,000, the commission cut for me is £4,000. So all of a sudden, 10 grand's coming in, you're paying me £4,000, you're promising the customer £2,000, and they're expecting that they're going to get 12. But hang on a second. These numbers don't stack up here. And I lasted there a week. I was asking questions. They got really fed up with me. And I was like, this just isn't legit. But people were falling for it hand over foot. These guys were getting paid on a Friday and they were having a ball. Like, some guy was making 30 grand, 40 grand a week. Like, this is back in 2012, mate. A lot of cash. And these schemes always follow the same trend. They're selling something that it sounds easy, promising you money.
And what do you think now? Nathan and I, the co-founder of Efficacy, Nathan and I always have this discussion. We find, having been in the space, interest in trading essentially being targeted with ads for around 6 or 7 years. We find these scams tend to be cyclical. It was Forex signals, then it was sort of crypto signals, now it's crypto just in general. Where do you see the next big scam being, do you think? What do you think's on the horizon? Do you think it'll stay with cryptos? Do you think we'll move? Obviously, because Forex is ultimately saturated with scammers. It is horrendous. I mean, there are 3 or 4 times a week at the moment where I've generally considered putting my account on private, just having the YouTube channel, because there are so many illegitimate traders out there who are sort of setting up these educational companies when they've got no experience in the market.
Mate, dude, do not get me started. Like, literally, this is what I think is going to start happening. There's going to be a merger and a breed of the two. So I've been speaking about one particular company for months now. I'm not going to mention their name. But I know who it is. But anybody who listens to me will know the company that I'm talking about. And what they're essentially doing is they're bridging Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and Forex trading. Now, explain to me how that works. You fund your account with Bitcoin. It goes into Forex. It then gets converted back out from Bitcoin to fiat to trade Forex, but you then get paid back in Bitcoin.
Yeah, it sounds like they almost don't want your initial transaction / deposit to be traced.
Exactly. And this is what I keep saying to people and screaming at the top of my lungs, but I'm an idiot. I have no idea what I'm talking about. And that's really what I think is what we're likely to see. We're likely to see a continuation of those kind of like mergers across two things that are, number one, popular, and number two, appeal to a lifestyle. Bitcoin, because yeah, it's sexy, it's Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
It could be worth $130,000 a coin at some point in the future. And Forex,
Yeah.
because guess what? You're taking advantage of the biggest market on the world in terms of
Oh,
liquidity
yeah.
and trading size.
Yeah, which just means you can lose money faster than any other market, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But with Bitcoin being so sort of blasted in the news now, one thing that me and Nathan were trying to have a discussion about with a couple of members recently, and I'd be keen to get your take on it. Obviously, gold used to be sort of the classic inflation hedge. Obviously, it's pegged against the dollar. If inflation happened, the gold price would go up. Do you think now Bitcoin's maybe being used as that? Obviously, as we see Bitcoin prices seemingly rally higher and higher every other day. Do you think maybe some institutional investors, more traditional investors, are going to move from gold being their inflation hedge over to Bitcoin?
We started to see early signs of that this year with Tesla and BNY Mellon and a couple of
Yeah.
the institutional bodies getting in on Bitcoin. Will it replace? It won't replace gold. I don't think it will, because look, what do they both have in common? They're finite resources. There's only going to be
Yeah.
ever 21 million Bitcoin, so it has already set itself up as a store of value, as a hedge
Yeah.
against inflation fundamentally. I think in terms of easy access and tradability, it has an advantage over gold, because like with gold, like you're not going to go and buy physical gold. You've got to go and buy a gold ETF, or got to
Yeah.
buy an option or something like that on gold, where it
Yeah.
feels as though Bitcoin is just a bit more fluid, a little bit more quicker, a little bit more liquid, liquid for you to be able to transact. So I think you will enter a space where both of them will be on equal footing. But part of me just feels as though Bitcoin might just edge it in terms of popularity a little bit, because
Yeah.
of the insane valuations that are coming
Yeah.
along with Bitcoin.
Yeah. I think gold is almost seen as old money now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Bitcoin almost, especially from people of my generation, sort of born in the 95 to 2000 era, seems to be all people are interested in at the minute,
Mm-hmm.
cryptocurrency. I get several messages every single day. I had a text this morning. I was driving into work and I got a text saying from a friend of mine who's ex-military, so he's not finance
Mm-hmm.
based. Should I buy Dogecoin or should I buy cryptos? And I literally phoned him and was like, "You haven't got a clue what you're doing. Just please don't do that." And I think that's definitely going to be creeping in. But I think that to sort of go back to the scams, is there any nice stories from Wit in the Bank? Is there any sort of thing that stick in your mind of sort of the best thing that maybe you've given someone good advice, or you've seen someone maybe turn someone around? What's the sort of best stories? Such, I mean, I've got a few good stories from trading, but
Yeah, there are so many, mate. This is the beauty of financial services, and whilst working in the industry sometimes can be very tedious and it has a bad rap, but we do a lot of good work. I mean, just as a financial advisor, I can reel off so many instances where we've actually changed people's outlooks and lives. I mean, I remember seeing a lady once who, she was about 63 or so at the time when I met her, and she was like, "Oh, I really want to retire. I'm just knackered. I'm waiting for my state pension to kick in 2 years' time, but
yeah,
I've just had enough." And said, "Well, what pension provisions do you have?" "I don't have any." "Okay, where have you worked?" "I've worked at these 4 or 5 different places." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Well, let's see if there's any money lying around that you didn't know
yeah,
of." Sent some money, sent the information off, got her to sign some letters of authority. Lo and behold, it comes back. She's got 100 grand that she didn't even know about. And it's like, this is
yeah,
money that enabled her to retire early,
yeah.
clear
It's a life
some
changing
credit
amount of
card
money.
debt, yeah, give a little bit of money to her kids, and retire 2 years early. I mean, there are so many um, stories like that. Even when it comes to first time house buyers and thinking, oh, you're never going to be able to get a mortgage, or you're struggling to get a mortgage. Actually, no, like things are difficult, things aren't perfect, but guess what? We got the mortgage for you. Like finances and money, it really is about stepping stones and stages and progress in life. That's why I say money is a tool, life is for living. It is only
Yeah,
a tool to help you create the life that you want. And it's just the understanding of what to do with it, how to actually use it to forge the life that you want, that a lot of people miss because we don't
yeah,
get taught the fundamentals in school.
yeah. And I think that's really important to remember as well. I think obviously I bang the drum a bit on my Instagram and on YouTube about sort of all these scammers around, but I think it is vital to remember that there is a lot of good that can come from the financial markets. Obviously, you can
Mhm.
lose a lot of money, but at the same time, you can also make a lot of money. And I think the financial sector as a whole gets sort of demonized a little bit sometimes because it's the big fat bankers who are sort of taking all your money and doing stupid things with it. But I think it's really important to remember that there actually is a lot of good that comes from that sector as a whole.
You know what
And
it is, though, right? I just think that the traditional view of the financial services industry is just out of touch with what reality is right now, because
yeah,
it is, watch Billions, right? It's Bobby Axelrod, who's an absolute freaking asshole, right? But billionaire, who,
yeah,
you picture it and you think of people like that. You think of Wolf of Wall Street, bigger than life characters,
yeah,
lots of money, just acting just like idiots.
yeah,
I think is out of touch with what people expect. And this is where I think that my industry really definitely needs to, do a bit of a rebrand. It needs to become more relatable, more relevant, which is why I do what I do now. I'm no special than you or anybody else on the street, but I've been lucky enough to work in the industry, pick up knowledge that I'm now sharing. And I think we
yeah,
need to come back and meet people where they're at. I think sometimes and historically in financial services, it's the big boys looking down, talking down to the general public,
yeah,
whereas the big boys need to come down here and help elevate the general public to their level.
yeah. I really like that sort of that viewpoint. I think it's definitely important. I think there is definitely, as someone who hasn't worked in a sort of institution, I've only sort of been on the retail side of the fence. I definitely think there is almost something that needs to bridge the gap between those two levels. I think that would definitely um, improve the sort of appearance, the aesthetic of the industry as a whole. I think that'd be really
Mm-hmm.
important. I think bringing it into schools and stuff as well, and teaching children the same as what they get taught maths
Mm-hmm.
and English at school, I think would be really vital. Just general financial tips, because I do think a lot of people don't help themselves when it comes to personal finance, and I think those sort of mistakes that people make could just be mitigated by being a bit more financially literate, which is obviously why you do what you do, why we do what we do. But obviously, there's only, well, I mean, there's quite a few people who watch your channel, but there's not too many people who watch our channel as of yet. So I think getting that into sort of mainstream education would be really important. But if you were to go back those sort of 10, 15 years, would you do it again? Would you work in a bank again? Was your general experience, and is your general experience of the whole sector positive? And if someone did actually want to get into that space, sort of, what would your advice be? Would you sort of go down the degree route, or what? What would your tips be?
Yeah, great question. I mean, if I could have it all again, I would absolutely do it all again, because at the end of the day, my career through financial services and in the bank. I mean, I think back to my first interview when, I was going to apply for the job in the building society. I didn't want to be there. Like, I
Yeah,
did not want to be there. I rocked up in jeans and a leather jacket. I was that disinterested. But the
yeah,
lady, Jenny, she saw something in me. And that has led me to where we are right now, like where I can share my knowledge and I have a platform. And it's crazy because I was looking at the numbers literally last week, and the platform in the last 16 months has reached 1 million people. That is mind
geez, that is
boggling.
incredible. Yeah,
It's
that is
mind
mental.
boggling. And, you know, I looked at it and I was like, wow, like 12, look, literally beginning of 2020, the YouTube didn't exist. The podcast didn't exist. The Instagram was just there, yeah, doing what
Yeah,
it was doing. I would do all of it all over again. And I would say to anyone who wants to get into financial services, you don't need a degree. You don't. I mean, if you want to go and work in places like Canary Wharf, I was extremely lucky
yeah,
that, the company saw something in me and they were willing to give me a chance. But typically, if you want to go and work for an investment house, JP Morgan, KPMG, someone like that in Canary Wharf, you do need a degree. Maybe that would
yeah,
be something that I would have done differently had I been able to afford it, because I couldn't afford it
yeah,
when I came back. I came back 17, 50 quid in my pocket, no family here.
yeah,
It wasn't a thing, despite the fact that I have, I did A levels, I've got physics, chemistry, biology at very, very high grades. I was academically astute enough, but I wasn't financially in the position to be able to afford university. That may
yeah.
be something that I would change, but you don't need a university degree to get in at the ground floor in a financial institution. You don't.
That's awesome. I think that's definitely hopefully something valuable for anyone who's sitting there sort of maybe feeling like they've been penned into a different career path just purely because of their personal financial situation. I think it's vital that you don't sort of limit yourself. I know for me personally, that was something that limited me doing a degree and led me down the route I'm on at the moment, where I'm sort of having a sponsored degree essentially, where I don't have to pay for it, because it is an expensive endeavor having to go
Hmm.
through sort of university. And obviously speaking to Nathan, who is going to work, hopefully after he's done his master's degree at somewhere like JP Morgan on the sales and trading floor, it is an expensive endeavor to
Hmm.
go on, and it is a big time commitment. But I think it's definitely, don't just write it off if you don't want to get a degree in that sort of traditional way. But yeah, I think that probably wraps up. I think everyone has probably got a million questions in the comments. So what we'll do, guys, is Pete, you will have to hang around in the comments once this has gone live,
Yeah,
and,
sure.
maybe there'll be a live that we can jump on together at some point in the near
Yeah,
future.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Who
Yeah, I
knows?
mean, if
Yeah.
you want to, yeah, let's talk. If you want me to jump in the comments, or you want to do a live straight off the back of the video going live on the channel, I'm happy to work around you.
Awesome. And if anyone wants to maybe get in touch and learn how to invest in themselves, invest in stocks, obviously we aren't really the guys for that. So how can people get in touch with you, Pete, and learn about that?
Yeah, just head over to the YouTube channel. There's a lot of free content there. I think I've got 140 odd videos on there right now. I'm doing more live sessions, so you can tune into one of the live sessions there. You can ask me questions. But if you just wanted to be able to do it in your own time at home, 94 minutes, you can take my course. The course is only $59.99. I reduced the cost down at the beginning of the year because I wanted to make sure that it's available to everybody and affordable to everybody. But it's self-taught. It's 4 chapters, 14 modules. You've got tests in there, assessments to help you consolidate your knowledge, so you can take that as well. But yeah, I'm on Instagram. The podcast is called the Conversation of Money Podcast. It's all on Spotify, Apple, Google, all that good stuff.
It'll all be
And
linked
then on
below.
Instagram, and then Instagram as well, which is Conversation of Money.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and and answer the sort of questions and have this conversation. It's been really good, and hopefully we can get you on again.
No, no. Anytime you need me, mate, I'm here. And like I say, you're coming on a live stream marathon with me in a few weeks' time. So yeah, great. Cheers,
Yes.
Jack.
Awesome. Well, guys, if you have enjoyed this video, please make sure you like and subscribe, and also head over to Pete's channel, which there will be a link just below that like button in the description. And yeah, we do need some subscribers, guys. You've been slacking on the subscribers. The views have been doing awesome recently, but make sure you hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for all the awesome content that we've got planned